Good morning, everybody, from a chilly but sunny Indianapolis. Welcome to the second edition of Kenny, Coffee, and Cars. I'm going to spend the next half hour answering some of the many questions that we've gotten in. And as I said last week, these are great questions we've had. The questions will all kind of be based off of my 50-some years experience of building sports cars, race cars, track cars, and everything in between. In fact, I picked up 6 national championships racing Mustangs at professional level over the years. But today we're going to move on to, it's going to be a little bit of change of format because we're operating under my 3-time rule. Now, this 3-time rule is important to remember. My 3-time rule states that the first time you do something, you learn how not to do it. And the second time, you start to get it figured out, and by the third time, you should be getting it figured out. So this is the second time. So we're going to change the format a little bit because what I learned last week is I just cannot get to all the questions that people send in, answering one at a time. So what we're going to try to do is we're going to put a group of questions together into a category, and I'll talk to the category. But to start off, I need to finish up from last week. I started talking about the trick I have for track car, street car alignment, and how you don't have to have all this fancy stuff. And I sort of got off on another subject, so I'm going to start off with finishing off with that. And what I've got here is a caster camber plate. And caster camber plates move in 2 directions, forward and backwards, and in and out. The forward and backward is caster, and caster is very important. In a Mustang, you want to push it all the way back toward the back of the car, maximum caster. You can't put enough caster in a Mustang. What that does, 2 things. First of all, it creates great high-speed stability. And the other thing a lot of people don't know about, it actually helps turn in and improves the camber gain. And in and out is camber. And what we want is negative camber, which means the inside of the tire is pointing inwards. Because Mustangs have what's called a positive roll suspension. The more the car rolls, the more the alignment goes to positive camber. You don't want positive camber, that chews up the outside of the tire. So we start with a lot of negative camber, so when a car rolls over, you get a flat footprint. So the trick I have is you go to whatever you get your car aligned, get your street alignment, which is like 0.75 to negative 0.75 to 1.25 negative camber. And then what you do is you make some marks on the plate and marks on the strut tower. And then when you get to the track, you loosen up the nuts and you just drop it all the way in, full negative camber. Sounds like a lot, but from there, what you want to do is you want to, over the course of the first day, is you want to tune the camber based off of your tire temperatures and tire wear. And we'll get on tire temperatures a little bit later in this, but that's kind of the trick. And then after you're done at the track, you just move it back, line the marks up, and boom, you got your street alignment back. So that's kind of like my little trick. Brake ducts. I forgot to tell people that when I talked about how important brake ducts were last week, we actually have brake ducts for SN95, S197, and S550 cars. And on the trailers, I mentioned what I like about trailers. I forgot to mention that we have a trailer company we work with that does really great job, and I think Chris last week commented on the trailer that we got for him. So before we get to the main subjects, I got a category I call quick hitters. And on the quick hitters, the first one is note on Fox body. We got more than a couple of people wanted to know about Fox body, and we're gonna, I love Fox bodies. I've got my '93 World Challenge Mustang Fox body that I still have, and we've got a front suspension and we've got all the chassis stuff. The rear suspension we used to have in production, we didn't bring back to production because it was kind of a big hassle. What we found with the Fox and our Track Kit Plus, it's the first panel bar that appeared on a late model Mustang, is that with all the different exhaust systems, it was just too difficult to come up with something that fit everybody. So when we started bringing all our products back, I've got something really interesting planned for the Fox body as far as a new suspension that'll also work on SN95. But it's got to be a year away because I've got a whole bunch of other items that are ahead of it. And let's see. Oh, I got to read this to you. This is pretty cool. It came in with one of our questions. It says, how can I check to see if I'm getting the most out of my Keddy Brown equipment I have already installed? I mean, the improvement after installation was incredible, but is there a way to check and see if I'm getting everything I can from your products? I mean, all I can say is, how does it feel? I mean, if it feels great and you're enjoying yourself, you're getting out what you need. What I get out of my suspension, you know, when I'm driving on track is going to be different than you or you, just simply because I drive differently. And, you know, my level, you know, I've got tens of thousands of miles of track driving in, so I can have a tendency to go pretty quick when I want to, but it's just, how does it feel? I mean, if it feels good and it makes you happy, you're getting what you can out of it. Now, the subject matter today is I'm going to talk about philosophy, the performance platform, and tire temperatures. But I also want to mention that we're going to be doing a 5-day workshop on building a Mustang. And we asked last week for ideas on names or to vote on some names, and the overwhelming answer for our group, our private group, is going to be the Speed Therapy Society, which I kind of like too. So that's the name of the group. And to sign up for the free 5-day workshop, all you have to do is get into the group. And I think Carrie or somebody can probably post a link to that. Last week I said we'd have it set up in a few days. Well, we just got it set up yesterday. So it's open, and it's going to be pretty cool. I mean, I'm going to try to squeeze in as much in 5 days based off of the questions that we've received as I can to answer as many questions as possible. Now, first on my subject matter today is pick a philosophy, and you're going to hear me say this more than once. When you're going to work on your car, build it up, the one thing you want to do is pick a philosophy, somebody's philosophy, whether it's mine or somebody else's. It doesn't matter to me. I prefer it to be mine. But the thing is, I mean, the absolute worst phone calls we get is somebody that's having trouble making their car go around a track, and I start asking about equipment, and they've got this part from this company, that part from another company, and this for yet another company. And it's like, I mean, my heart just sinks because I just can't give anybody an answer because we've never worked with those products in that arrangement. So I mean, I can't give them any information. But what they've done is, by getting bits and pieces from everybody, they've actually initiated their own R&D program, and the R&D program that hasn't gone very well. So that's why I say you pick a philosophy. Like what my philosophy we'll be getting into more and more, especially in the 5-day free workshop. But it's kind of based off of a lot of experience, a lot of track time, a lot of mistakes. The mistakes I made, you're not going to make because you're going to know the answers ahead of time. So the pick a philosophy, I like mine. So we'll get more into that. Okay, building the performance platform. Now this is pretty important. To me, the performance platform is chassis, suspension, wheels, tires, and brakes. You need to start someplace. The chassis is always the best place to start, especially on Fox and SN95s. They've got really weak beer can chassis. So getting like the matrix system underneath there to firm up the body. You want to take twist out the early cars. You want to take as much twist out of the body as you can, because when there's so much twist in there. When we first started doing this in like the late 80s, we went and we jacked up like one front wheel on a Mustang, and that was the only tire that was off the ground. If that gives you an idea of how much twist there is in the chassis. And what that does is that twist actually eats horsepower, number one, and also it becomes an uncontrolled suspension piece because it's moving. And just by putting in the double cross subframe connector, jacking rails, and matrix brace, when we did that test again, we've got both the tires on one side came off the ground. About the same amount. So I mean, there's a big difference. And the other thing that people don't realize is firming up the chassis actually improves the ride quality. I mean, we've had a lot of people that we've just done the chassis support, and they've come back and said, "What did you do to the engine?" Well, we didn't do anything. We just made the car work better. And in the Fox and SN95s, we've got strut tire braces and rear shock tower braces, which help firm it up even more. Now, getting into the 197 cars, the 5 to 14s, Ford did a lot to firm up that chassis. And so all we have on that is our jacking rail and a matrix brace, because they got this really nice channel that comes down the middle of the car, so we don't need to put subframe connectors in. So that's how we tighten that up. But again, the jacking rails are something everybody needs. You know, we developed the jacking rail in '86. We were doing the Saleen Mustangs, racing the Saleen R Mustangs in endurance racing, and it provided a way that we could get the car jacked up really fast, get the tire changing back down. When we did it, the SCCA decided that was illegal because it was stiffening the chassis. So we made a compromise. We cut like 2 little nicks in it with a hacksaw, so it wasn't solid front to rear. That's how we got away with that. But then we carried that over into '87, and then it was like a year or so after we did that program, and we thought, you know, why don't we carry this over the street cars? That's when we started doing the jacking rails and also the double cross subframe connectors, which, by the way, was the first double cross sub connector on the market. So that's for as far as getting the chassis in place. So chassis suspension. When we get the suspension, that kind of breaks into 2 categories: the actual physical suspension pieces and springs and shocks. And with the suspension pieces that we have, and I'll talk mostly about the S197 because that's where most of our comments came from, questions on the S197, I've done so much work with geometry. Here's the thing, it's in high school, I was lousy at geometry, probably because it wasn't very interesting. But as I started working on race cars, I realized that, oh my gosh, geometry is what makes things work. And by making things work, I'm talking about tire contact patch. The more tire you put on the ground, the more of the time, the better grip you're going to get. The better grip you get, the faster you go. So I've been working on Mustang geometry actually since end of '86, '87. The end of '86, I got connected with a guy in Ford who's in the suspension department. And he was kind of interested in what we're doing, and we started working on some different geometry for the front suspension. And in '87, we kept, we talked back and forth, what if we did this, what if we did that? And after work, he'd run that through his computer, and he'd come up with an answer. So we came up with some pretty good ideas. But in professional showroom stock racing, quote, showroom stock, you're not supposed to change anything. So by the amazing guy that Steve Saleen was, one day we got 3 brand new K members that showed up from the factory that had no holes in them, no holes whatsoever. So I sent everybody home early, and I spent the night putting holes in the 3 K members, and by the time I was done, every hole had been moved and was all painted up, and you couldn't tell the difference. So that was kind of like, I'm my AGS, Advanced Geometry Suspension System. That was like AGS 1. So that's where the whole thing started. And then as we go through the years, I kept improving it. In 2, we added, AGS 2, we added some traction in the back. We went to the fixed strut, which we first started putting like serious camber into it. And then the 3.0 was kind of like a big shift. That's when we went to the full K member for the front. Because just by working with the stock K member for the street and performance guys, it didn't make sense to do all the work to move all the points around. So what we did was just do the whole new K member, but we put the geometry into that. And then in the back, we came up with the AGS geometry for the IRS Cobras, which was pretty cool. Again, we moved all the suspension points in the back. And speaking of IRS Cobras, we've had a bunch of questions about that. If you guys with the Cobras would like me to do kind of like a special something on just the 99 to 04 Cobras, I'll be happy to do that. Just let me know, and we'll try to figure out how we can make that work. So in the performance platform, we're talking about the chassis and suspension. The first part of the suspension, from what I do, is getting the geometry right. And in the 5-day workshop, we're going to talk more about the actual geometry, because I've had a number of questions on geometry in a Mustang. So we'll get into that in the workshop. But what we've done is with like S197, we've kind of reduced the performance platform, the suspension, down to 3 pieces: rear grip kit, front grip kit, and springs and shocks. And the reason for that is every single piece in the rear suspension is engineered and changed to have a positive effect on the overall geometry in the back. So it made more sense to try to sell everything together as a package because everything's engineered to work together. Now, you can still buy the pieces individually, and we have people that will buy, piece at a time and work into getting the full rear grip kit. And then the front grip kit is the same thing. We just put all the pieces into the front grip kit, which is the K-member, control arms, and the bump steer tie rod ends. And so that's it. I mean, it's front grip kit, rear grip kit, pretty simple. And that works amazingly well. And then we get into the other part of suspension, which is springs and shocks. This is a really important part of your suspension. Shock absorbers, are kind of what control the car. And over the years, I've developed I use a lot higher spring rate than anybody else in the aftermarket. It's simply because you need to put a lot of spring in the front of a Mustang to make it turn. To give you kind of a quick idea, the Mustang comes with, this is 197 cars, comes with about maybe 175 front spring rate. Off the shelf sport performance springs that you can get, maybe get you up to 220, but that's kind of about it. But our touring package starts at 350, and our performance street package is 400, and the performance street package is every bit capable to go and do track days on, particularly if you're a novice. That'll get you, a lot of track days at the 400-pound rate. When people start moving up, sort of like the intermediate cars, we get to like 500, 550, but our advanced drivers, we're running 650-pound front springs, and you go, whoa, that's a lot. But on my late son Paul's World Challenge car, I mean, we started with 850 and went to 1,000. So the more spring you put into a car, the better it's going to react. And then it gets down to the shock valving. Well, a lot of people think that you put a heavy spring in a car is going to make the ride really harsh. Not true. The spring's job is to hold the car up. The ride comes from the shock absorbers. It's the shock absorber's job to create ride quality. And that's why over the years I've used like the European style shocks, Konis and Bilsteins, just simply because I spent, like 15 years working on European sports cars, and I just like the way they ride. And I've carried that over into the Mustangs. And so we've got just this, I'm very particular on the shocks I use. We don't offer that many. It's not like some of the other places you get like 10 different kinds of shocks. We only offer the ones I really like. And the major shocks, our premium shock is the JRZ, which we actually get custom built in the Netherlands, and they ship them over. And they're an amazing shock. That's what Paul used to win the World Challenge GTS Championship. And we're actually working with, I don't know if Herster was here today, but I believe he's from Bulgaria. He's got a S550 that we're helping him get set up for both street and track with the JRZ shocks. And if you're listening, I've got an email off to JRZ, and I should hear back the first of the week on the question that you asked. So,
actually, Herstopher has a question relating to that, so I'll read it to you. Question for Herstopher. Last week you commented on alignment. Could you give a good street track alignment for the stock S550 GT PP, as I'm going doing my alignment this week?
I'll get right to what I said in the beginning. A good street alignment is a negative camber of 0.75 to 1.25, and caster is much caster as you can get into the car. You cannot put too much caster into a Mustang. And as far as toe, here's the important thing: toe out. Well, I use toe out in the front. Toe out is really important. Everybody else, kind of runs toe in because that's what the factory says. But what toe out does, it actually gives you a lot better turn in, which is really important. I mean, the faster you get into a corner, the faster you get out of a corner. So we run about a 1/16 of an inch, which is negative 0.25 to negative 0.3 of toe out in the front. Now on the IRS Cobras, we'll reverse that and we'll run the same amount of toe in on the back. But for the 550, it's no different than what I talked about earlier. If you've got camber plates, when you go to the track, put all the camber in it'll take. And then work with tire temperatures to take camber out. So that you're getting the best out of your tires and the performance. And again, we'll get into tire temperatures here in just a minute. So that's kind of like the performance platform: chassis, suspension, wheels, tires, brakes. Oh, brakes. I've got brakes. Brakes, another big important thing. I think the very first thing, if you're going to the track for the first couple times, brake pads. You've got to have brake pads. I tell people there's two kinds of brake pads. There's street pads and there's track race pads. And the difference is temperature, how much temperature the pad will take. Your street pads, are only good up to a couple hundred degrees, maybe. I don't know. I never looked into it. But I know that I've seen people that go to the track, the very first time to the track with street pads, get going really hot, and all of a sudden they got no brake pads 2 laps into a session, and they're off into the kitty litter. So brake pads are important, and in the 5-week or the 5-day workshop, I'll get deeper into brake pads, but it's all about friction, temperature, and wear. And you want to have brake track pads for the track, because that's what they're designed for, and street pads for the street. We do have some compounds there's some people that aren't really advanced drivers, but like to drive their car to the track and don't want to change brake pads at the track. And we do have some compounds that will cross over between street and track, but they've got an upward limit of maybe 1,000 degrees. So, but again, that'll come up in the 5-day session. Tire temperatures. Tire temperatures, if anybody that knows me knows that tire temperatures are the absolute thing they have to understand. When anybody calls up and says, listen, I'm at the track, my car's doing this, it's not doing that, what adjustments can I make? The very first question I ask is tire temperatures. If I don't have tire temperatures, I say, well, get me tire temperatures and then I can help you. Because until you get the optimum tire pressure based off of temperatures, adjusting your suspension, you might be going the wrong way. The car might be doing one thing, and you make a chassis adjustment, and it gets worse. And it's because you're not getting the tire footprint that you want. And we've got a kit. It's a tire temperature kit that has a nice little toolbox and barometer, air pressure gauge, and some sheets that we use to record tire temperatures. And the trick is, and again, this will be more in the 5-day thing, is you really want to get, the optimum is to get the temperatures across the surface of the tire as close to the same as possible. Now, you never, ever will see them perfectly the number across. But what you want to do is try to get them as close as possible. On the front, if you've got camber in the car, you're always going to see that the inside being hotter and the outside being cooler. If the outside's hotter, then you don't have enough camber in the suspension, in the alignment. So say, for example, you've got, choose 100 degrees temperature on the outside and 120 degrees temperature on the inside. And you've got 110 degrees is what you're looking for in the middle. So if your temperature is above 110 degrees, you want to let some air out. If your temperature is below 110 degrees, you want to put some in. And you keep working at that. I mean, when I go to the track, I spend the entire first morning doing nothing more than getting tire temperature set. It's kind of like get the car set up and then go fast. And by the time I get the tires temperature set up, then we'll start working on the alignment. Do I need to add some camber, take some camber out? Remember, if the outside of the tire is hot, you need more negative camber. If the inside tire is too hot, you need less negative camber. But I will say, on a strut car, you always want to have a little more heat on the inside of the tire. You don't want to get them so it's perfectly all the way across. You maybe 10, 15 degrees hotter on the inside. You just need that negative camber. Now on the back, you always try to get them straight across, but again, you're going to find it's really difficult to get the tire temperature even straight across. And sometimes you're going to notice that maybe the inside of the rear tires get a little warm, and that doesn't make sense. Well, what's happening is the axles actually bend a little bit when you're driving really fast. So it's not unusual to see warm temperatures on the inside. But again, if you've got 110 on the outside and 110 on the inside and 100 in the middle, then you want to add some air. If you've got 120, then you want to take some air out. Because if you've got too much air, then the tire is kind of like rounded, so you're only using the center part of the tire. If you don't have enough air, it's kind of like concaved, and you're not moving the center of the tires. You want to use all the tire you can, because that's grip. And the whole thing about going fast or even enjoying is grip. The more grip you have, the more fun it becomes. So we talked about philosophy, tire temperatures, and grip. Let's see. Do we have some questions for me?
Yeah, we sure do.
I'll try to answer some questions now. Oh, hi, Doug. Doug's out there. We've known Doug for a long time. His nickname is Drifter Doug because that's what he does. Is he drifts Mustangs, but he is also a instructor for the Porsche school. Okay, when adding aero to a car, front splitter, rear wing, what effect do you see on shocks, strut valving, and alignment? Well, that's a great question. If you get the balance right between rear and front, you're actually just putting equal weight down on the car, and it shouldn't have a major effect on alignment. But then again, if you're checking your tire temperature, you're going to see just what's happening, and if it is changing the alignment and making you, then just go back and adjust. I mean, that's the whole thing. And, you know, the entire morning I say adjust, and the afternoon start going fast, and then the next day you go like crazy in the morning. In fact, your best, if a 2-day weekend, your absolute best session is going to be the session before lunch on the second day. Your absolute worst session is going to be the very last session of the day on the second day. And I tell people by that time to kind of slow down for the last session, think about everything you learned, work on your line, breaking points, and things like that, because the statistic is more incidents happen on the last session of the last day than any other time of the weekend. And I've seen that, time and time again over the years. So, the aero, and the other thing about aero is you need to kind of get it balanced out, because, a rear wing actually helps the front, and the splitter on the front actually helps the back. And running splitters, here's something some data I ran across a couple of years ago. When you get more than about 2 to 2.5 inches of lip out on like a street car, that's kind of the optimum. If you get like over 4, you're actually creating more drag than downforce. So you don't need a great big huge splitter in the front. And it's, of course, unless you're running Pikes Peak, and they run coffee tables for splitters in the front. But just a little bit of splitter makes a big difference. And then the wing in the back, there's a number of different kinds of wings. Some are better than the others. Let's see. Okay, I was reading, I think that was Bob. He was actually going to Phoenix and some guidance. He kind of went away.
Here, I can read it to you.
Okay.
We'll be getting Phoenix ready for the track in April. Phoenix is his car.
Oh, okay.
I will need guidance regarding front and rear alignment. I'm a true believer in monitoring tire temperature. See if everybody can hear me or if they get the question.
Okay, I don't know if everybody heard that, but Phoenix isn't where he's going. Phoenix is the name of the car.
We name all our cars.
And we name all our cars, and most of our customers name their cars too. It's a lot easier to call a car by name than that blue car or that red car. So all my cars have always had names, and Phoenix is Roberts. And he wanted to know about
guidance regarding front and rear alignment.
Guidance about alignment, getting ready for the spring. Well, the best thing I can say, I went over a lot of things, but the best thing is just give me a call, and we'll kind of go through it so that we get everything kind of clear. And that's something else I'll do for people is like, let's say a 15-minute consult. Again, based on my time and schedule, I can give up 15 minutes to talk to somebody. If it gets much more than that, then we're getting into a whole consulting type thing. But I do these little 15-minute one-on-one things. So, and if you want to do something like that, if you got a question that we're not getting answered, then or what to do next, just call in and we'll try to match you up with my schedule, and we'll talk about it. Let's see. Jim says he can hear me fine. Okay, that's important. What do we have for another question?
I don't have any more questions right now. Why don't you ask them to send them in?
We ran out of questions. Anybody else have a question we can talk about? How are we doing on time?
It's 11:30.
We're running out of time, but I still will take some more questions. If you see me doing this, I'm trying to read these teeny little words on my phone, which is not all that easy.
Any difference between V6?
Oh, I can actually read that from Christopher. Any difference between V6 cars and V8 cars? Yeah, one's got a big, powerful V8, one's got a 6-cylinder. But aside from that, the big difference is the 6 cylinders are a lot lighter in the nose. So technically they wouldn't carry quite as much front spring, but outside of that, everything else would be absolutely the same. And a lot of times we'll have guys with 6-cylinder cars putting the same spring rates on as the V8 cars and just going like crazy. So that's kind of the big difference. And then everything else boils down to reading your tire temperatures and adjusting your pressures and suspension. No more questions right now? Oh, okay. Let's talk about... Okay, next week what I'm going to talk about, and this is kind of like general subject areas based on multiple questions. We're going to talk about wheels and tires, and we're going to talk about understeer, oversteer, and we're going to talk about handling. I can answer the understeer, oversteer question really fast. Understeer is when you hit the wall at the front of the car. Oversteer is when you hit the wall at the back of the car. That's about the easiest explanation we can get. So we're going to wrap this up for today. Hope to see you next week. And don't forget the Speed Therapy Society. Get signed up for that. And there'll be more information on when we're going to do the 5-day live workshop.
Invite your friends.
And invite your friends. And I'm starting to enjoy this better. It's still going to take me a little bit of time. I'm only on number 2 of my 3-time rule. Hopefully next week will be the 3rd time. I'll get a little bit better at it. But I certainly really appreciate you guys showing up. And like I say, the questions we've been getting, I'm just amazed. I'm really impressed by the questions. Like I say, we haven't had a clunker yet. So I think until next time, somebody come up with a catchy phrase for me when I sign off. I can't think of anything. So give me some ideas on what I can say at the very end. Otherwise, I'll just say goodbye until next week.